artists historically have, been always some of the best observers of the world around them.
Craig Follett. He built Universe.com, a social marketplace for events, and sold it to Ticketmaster in 2015. Following the sale, Craig grew the business 30-fold and took the company global before leaving in 2019. He then found his calling in building Peggy.com, a secure marketplace for buying and selling investment-grade art. In this episode, Craig shares how and why he found his post-exit mission in making incredible art affordable to everyone.
One of the things that make art interesting is it's an appreciating asset that you get to enjoy as it's appreciating. Art doesn't need to be beautiful necessarily. It could be ugly. Artists have shaped society in the past. You look at Keith Haring through the AIDS crisis in the 1980s, drawing attention to that and telling stories and messages and creating change. So that's very powerful.
Hi. Thanks for having us. See you here, all the way from Canada.
That's right.
Fantastic. What are you doing in London?
I'm here for a really special event. We're doing an auction of 700 artworks in conjunction with 7 musicians, so 100 artworks per musician, and 700 artists. So super cool. One of the musicians is Paul McCartney.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
Yeah.
I mentioned to you that I really wanted you on my show because we had that fantastic conversation in Miami a few months ago when you told me that you see building a business with art, and I would really like us to dig deeper into this.
Yeah, I love that. Totally. I think my co-founder and I are both creators and creatives, and our canvas in a way is software. And in this case, it's a bit meta because our software is also for artists, but this being our second venture together, we actually built our first one together and then sold it to Live Nation. We knew we wanted to build another together, and part of the motivation for that was really just the act of creating, building something. Couldn't imagine doing anything else other than building another one with Adam. So
then it makes you an artist.
I guess so, yeah. We view ourselves as artists, yeah.
So when you sold your company, which was quite a few years ago, in 2015,
that's right.
You sold your business, and then for 4 years you stayed with Live Nation, just Ticketmaster.
That's correct.
If you go back to that moment when you were free from your business and from Ticketmaster, that moment you realized you could do whatever you want, your business is sold, your obligation is over. How did it feel?
It felt like liberating and exciting, but also sort of strange, right? Because that was such a wonderful journey, but very, very intense and kind of fully involving us. And one of the reasons it felt strange is I took the sabbatical between the 2 ventures, and my first thought is, okay, I'm going to try to do nothing. and I tried my best to do nothing.
I did that.
And that was challenging. So after a short amount of time, I got a bit tired of doing nothing, and felt that I needed to do some other things, and still maintain it as a sabbatical, but inject some purpose and growth, and kind of take advantage of that sabbatical phase. But I did want to experiment with doing nothing as well.
How did you take advantage of that phase at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean,
what did you get out of it?
A bit of travel, of course. That's kind of a classic thing that people do. In the travel, one of the things that I did was a Vipassana. So that's a 10-day silent meditation. I did that in Thailand, and that truly was doing nothing, because that's sitting 10 hours a day meditating for 10 days in a row. It was doing nothing, but it was also sort of doing something. It injected a challenge and a purpose. Being a sabbatical is sort of a special phase where no obligations, taking time away from anything, could truly sort of sit there for 10 days. And
what did you get out of 10-day long meditation?
I think a lot. It's kind of maybe even hard to describe, but maybe reflecting on other things was a sense of appreciation. And to make that a story, I guess, like emerging from that, I felt very aware. Like I would see colors more vibrantly. Kind of notice things with a kind of like a closer eye, maybe the way that a child does a little bit, as a child is sort of, just has that sort of focus or attention or curiosity. And we get a bit distracted in life along the way where we've all our, have obligations and responsibilities. And so, that was really special, kind of a sense of appreciation. And
Do you think it had a long-term effect?
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Did it give you a clarity as to what you wanted to do next, or whom you want to become next?
It wasn't, there wasn't like an epiphany that came out of it. Like, if I need to do this or I want to be this, more just kind of like a strengthening of the mind, of a moment to let the mind reset and prepare for our next big thing. Definitely, I guess I also emerged from it with I'm a very motivated person already, but feeling kind of extra motivated, like, okay, I really want to dive into something and experience.
You felt hungrier.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. After sitting for 10 days, you want to
Hungry for
do
everything.
something. Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Because, there's this idea that boredom or silence is very good for creativity. Remember, that's where creativity actually comes from.
Yeah.
How you invite it in your life. So I was curious if that's where the roots of your new business came from. Would
For
you
sure.
say that? Or?
Yeah, I would say that that's a really special thing, that, creativity comes out of boredom. And in today's day and age where there's so many digital distractions and things, we rarely as a society get time to sort of have nothing and be bored and have that spark the desire for creativity. So totally.
So what did you do next?
Then another challenge I wanted to take on is do kind of a month of surfing straight. So did that, which was great. That's a challenge. Surfing is challenging and fun. And
Could you surf before?
I had surfed before a couple times, but I was like, I want to dive into something new. So for me, this was something new and a new challenge. And I love sports and staying active. So that's kind of another thing that I did.
You're a professional climber, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I've done my bit of climbing in the day. I don't call myself a professional, but I love climbing and bouldering. Yeah.
So you did a bit of that, and then I'm just trying to see how you changed during that time between your businesses and how the idea of going to a new business came to you. How long did it take?
My co-founder Adam and I, we've been brainstorming businesses pretty much ever since the day that we sold the first one. We're saying, okay, what would we do next?
Yeah.
And we started creating ideas, hundreds of ideas, many whimsical, some more concrete, and of course we ended up coming to Peggy, which is the new business. But we kind of started brainstorming right away, just observing things, pain points, ideas, and jotting them down. And
In Peggy, I assume your tech background and interest, AI, art, all came together.
Yeah.
Creativity. I can see how it ticks all the boxes for things you like and like.
Yeah,
Except for climbing.
Yeah, totally.
You forgot that one.
That's right. I have to maybe we'll find some artworks of climbers or something like that, or mountains.
So tell me about it, how you decided to do that.
Yeah, I mean one of the first things that I also did, I guess, in the sabbatical is I went to Art Basel in Switzerland, the original Art Basel in Basel, Switzerland, and that was a delight. And that's where I met our now Vice President of Art, Brom, and Hunter Shortley. It's amazing. And it's also where I learned a lot about the kind of blue chip art world and how it works, and how that's very vibrant for the ultra high net worth who can go there and purchase art from these major galleries, and there's a whole ecosystem there. So learned a lot.
How did you see an opportunity there? Because to me it's a very sort of obscure industry that I personally don't fully understand. And you came from a technical background. How did you see the opportunity there?
The opportunity wasn't solely from that trip. That was kind of an immersion that gave more context and kind of concrete understanding of the existing structures and incumbents in the space. But the idea also came from, when Adam and we sold the first business, we each bought some, nice houses. And these houses had big blank white walls that were just crying for art. And it was time to buy grown-up art. And so started looking into that. But I found it to be kind of an intimidating kind of decision to make, because once you buy that art, you're meant to take care of it and shepherd it. But if you're operating in an art bracket that's not Art Basel, you don't have that liquidity. You don't have the ability to rehome it. What if you're moving to a new place and you've got a different collector vision in that new place, a different collector voice? The rest of the world who aren't ultra high net worth don't have that flexibility, and therefore that lack of flexibility makes that investment in art a little less of an investment if there's no liquidity. So that actually really constrains the emerging and mid-career sector of the arts. Because if collectors have a hard time collecting art in that bracket because of this lack of flexibility, then that hurts the artist too, because it's harder to be an artist because there's less of a market for your art. So that was kind of a very tangible observation.
So how do you specifically solve that problem?
So we solved that problem by creating an app in a marketplace in this app. And one of the net new things that we've done is we've brought in an AI. So we've built an AI in-house, which lets an artist create an authentication of the artwork using their smartphone, the cameras on their smartphone, and our AI in the cloud, which crunches the optical inputs. And they register that unique one-of-one artwork as that specific artwork. So then from there, collectors in the future can verify the artwork and trace the ownership history through all the collectors over the years, decades, and maybe centuries ahead, all the way back to the artist studio. If the transaction ever happens in the future, we actually pay a resale royalty or an artist resale right to the artist, which actually there's an artist resale rate in the UK, but that doesn't exist in the rest of the world. It's only UK and Europe.
Yeah, because you did tell me that artists can get royalties from secondary sales.
Exactly.
Right, which I found very interesting, because musicians can do that in a way, right? But the artists normally don't.
Yeah, exactly. So, if an artist becomes, quote, successful, their painting just sold for millions of dollars, say, in the secondary market, then the artist doesn't get any of that monetary upside until Peggy. So, we wanted our second venture to really quite squarely have a social impact, and that's one of them.
Why is that? Did you have that already in your first business, or you kind of grew into it later?
I think we did have it in our first business, but maybe not as it wasn't as 0-1. It wasn't as kind of net new. What we did have in our first business is so it actually began as a sharing economy marketplace. So this was back in 2011 when most people hadn't heard about Airbnb. But there was this thing called the sharing economy, which was this movement, and there were all of these little startups for sharing of bicycles or spaces, Airbnb, for instance. So we created a company called Universe with two eyes, universe with two eyes.com, and the two eyes were kind of two little people, two stick figures with heads meeting in real life, because part of the social impact that we were trying to create there is connecting people in real life. The world was becoming, and is today as well, so virtual, so digital. You may not know the neighbors in your apartment building or in your community, and we wanted to connect people in real life over authentic sharing of experiences, of items, spaces, skills, and so we built that, and we had tens of thousands of dog walkers and tens of thousands of items and all this. But where we were starting to see traction, and that was actually the activities. So cooking classes or yoga in the park, peer-to-peer activities. So we focused on that because that's where we were seeing the most kind of traction, and those activities grew to larger and larger activities, and then ultimately they became events. So we ticketed the birthday party of a local celebrity chef who was on TV, and he brought 100 or 200 people that were all his friends, and they were also all chefs or foodies, And that from there, we ended up kind of exploding within food events. And we did a night market, food night market, and we needed a ticket scanning app for that. At this point, we still had item sharing in there, dog walkers and so forth. But then we kind of realized, oh, wow, we've kind of accidentally created a ticketing company with a very strong technology underpinning. So we focused on that and then sunsetted the items and the dog walking listings. And from there, just grew and became what is that? Universe with oneeye.com. Because it's no longer the two people. Yes, we managed to get universe.com. And Peggy.com, which was also challenging to get.
Fantastic. So most people I talk to honestly admit that when they started the first business, it was out of greed, or fear greed. How was it for you?
Yeah, I think it was also out of creativity. So at the time I was working at Boston Consulting Group, and I'd been there for maybe 3 years and was kind of on this partner track. I actually really enjoyed it and was doing very well, but I started choosing projects that were in the tech space, due diligences of startups or landscapes of new startup and technology sectors, and was interviewing all sorts of entrepreneurs and realized I want to be on the other side. I want to be doing that, and part of that I think is I wanted to be building. So I felt the desire to be building something again, so it kind of came out of that desire for creativity. Of course we wanted to make money while doing it, but we could have made money in our day jobs at BCG and what have you as well.
Yeah, interesting. So it was really creativity that pushed you forward. And now the new business, again, that's your motivation plus impact.
Yes,
So
plus also,
more.
certainly plus impact. Yeah.
And that's impact for primary artists, but also to give access to everyone to this art.
Yeah, to artists, but also to society at large, because there are unusual times in the world today, and artists historically have been always some of the best observers of the world around them, and many artworks have messages imbued in them, and artists often create change and catalyze change through these observations. And it's sort of tragic that to be a successful artist, you're you need to be part of this blue chip art world. But it's challenging for people to become an artist unless you're kind of inducted into that. And so by creating this kind of more vibrant, landscape and market for collectors to participate in art at a more affordable level, that means that artists can also do that. And we want to, help society evolve in a way that is observant and aware.
And does this give you a sense of purpose?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because you mentioned before, because that you lost that when the business was born. So you found it in Peggy.com, and that's what drives you now.
Yes, yeah. Totally.
Despite that under.
Yeah, a friend of mine was telling me about, he was going through a career change himself, and he was thinking about this framework that we together now have called AMP, A-M-P, which stands for Autonomy, Mastery, and Purpose. So he realized that those are three things that really motivate him. So that resonates with me too. Is certainly being an entrepreneur is autonomy. But if you're doing it for something that you believe in and you think has an impact, that provides purpose as well. And if you're doing something challenging with AI and so forth, maybe that's the mastery piece too.
And that's the definition of intrinsic motivation as opposed to extrinsic, right? Which we often deal first when we start the business. But I guess in your case, maybe it was a bit different. For most people, it's quite extrinsic.
Interesting.
Right. How this fact that you built and sold a successful business affected the way you think about money and wealth?
The first business? Yeah. I feel very lucky and grateful. I think, actually one thing I would remember or reflect on is during the time at BCG, you'd go out, maybe you'd treat yourself for dinner. And of course the food tastes pretty good, but I remember after starting the first business and earning the money that we did make the hard way, where we were being creative and working hard in a different way. Certainly it's hard work at BCG. The food sort of tastes better if you feel that maybe you've earned it a bit more. So that's a bit different. And then there's obviously, if when you reach a certain level of success, you can give back and so forth as well. So also during the sabbatical, I took my mom to Patagonia, and we, as a gift for a milestone birthday of hers, took my dad on a trip as well. And that was super special, to be able to create those memories, to have both the time to be able to do that, but also the means to do that too.
You know, I interviewed somebody a few days ago who wrote Boris Dyrenberg, and he wrote a beautiful post which was called "I Regret Selling My Business." And one thing he was talking about there is that he noticed that many people, after they sell the business, turn into dragons, and I love that, and that they turn into dragons and they focus all their energy on accumulating more wealth. And he didn't like that. He didn't relate to that. It sounds like it didn't happen to you.
No.
You didn't have that problem.
Yeah, I'm not a dragon.
And that's good. Yeah. And I'm happy to hear that, because I do believe that some people, when they accumulate money, they realize in a way whether they are more creators or whether they're more investors. And then creators, and you clearly are one of those, then some of them call themselves builders, they call themselves artists, but essentially it's creation that drives them. They end up building another business. And oftentimes they spend years first trying to become investors because they think they need to, that they expected to. And it's quite interesting that it sounds like you didn't do that.
I guess so.
You just following your a motivation for creativity.
Yeah, totally. And the investment that Adam and I are making is largely in ourselves. So it's a bet on ourselves and the kind of the next venture. Yeah.
So you would say money is more leverage for your purpose, and not necessarily a reward by itself.
Yeah, it's a resource. It lets you. It gives you time if you use it in a certain way, or and time is also an ultimate resource, and it's the scarcest resource, right? But it gives you opportunity and the ability to do other things.
And how it affected your relationships with other people, with the fact that you built and sold your business, and others would, see you as someone who succeeded that way. What happened in the social sphere of your life?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I didn't really think about that in terms of relationships with other people.
You handled it well with that.
That's good.
So who do you want to be when you grow up?
I guess I always admired both of my grandfathers in different ways, and one of them was an engineer, the other was an entrepreneur, and I always really admired that. This entrepreneur that he was a really cool guy, and had that autonomy and kind of a presence, and so maybe I want to be him a little bit.
And he's your role model.
A little bit, yeah.
Is he still around?
No, unfortunately not. Yeah.
So many people have this existential crisis of sorts after they start their business. Some say, "Oh, I sold my baby," or "I lost my baby." Others deal with imposter syndrome or guilt. And you seem to be surprisingly healthy mentally. How did you achieve that? Was it that 10 days of silent meditation?
Maybe it was the Vipassana, right? I think that's an interesting question. One thing I would reflect on is in the first venture, I kind of conflated or associated my identity with that of the business.
Yeah.
And so it was very sort of challenging to sell that and then to let go of it. Because, I felt that my identity was very tied to the business. And so letting go of that was like sort of shattered what my identity was. And, how do I define myself? So I had to almost recreate that from a new foundation with the resources from the acquisition and everything. So it's a good problem to have, for sure. But that is a unique observation for sure is like the association of identity with, which it's a business, is a corporation. Like it's not your identity. So in the second venture, really, I guess maybe just being aware of that is part of the solution, and knowing that the second venture it's not who I am. It's its own thing.
Do you manage to detach yourself? Does it work? Because I understand you want to achieve that theoretically.
Yeah, I want to achieve that. Do I manage to do that? I'd say yes and no. So the yes being yes, I realize now that okay, this is a separate entity. It is not me. It is Peggy, and it can live on its own. In fact, that to me is the definition of the success of it, is that it's this sort of self-healing organism that it's healthy on its own, and that I am not it. And I learned that from, actually spoke with another entrepreneur who sold his business, and spoke with him in a bit of a mentorship capacity as well, about his philosophies on that. But then in ways that I don't manage to, I'm definitely very involved in it. Right? It's an all-consuming labor of love, and I'm fully like invested in it, and from a time perspective and energy perspective. But that's different than the identity kind of concept.
It sounds like it's a vehicle through which you channel your creativity, and you achieve your purpose through it, but you manage to separate it into a different mean.
Totally, right, exactly. Whereas in the first venture, my definition of my being was like inclusive of the of universe, and I think it's healthier if you're able to kind of keep those a little bit separate.
So when you lost your identity of with universe.com, Mr. Universe, and you lost that identity, and you look at yourself in the mirror and you ask yourself, so who am I without universe.com? What was your answer?
I guess, I look at the circles around me. So I look at my family, my, immediate family and extended family. And that's a reflection of who you are, I guess, as well. So that's one thing. And then I guess in trying to do nothing, whether it was literally just, trying to do nothing at home or doing the Vipassana, kind of maybe realizing that creative drive, kind of the artist at heart kind of mentality. So when you strip away the business at a kind of outlets, maybe that's where it came down to.
So let's talk about self-interest and how you feel about that. So do you think it's morally acceptable to pursue self-interest through business?
That's an interesting question. I think if you are pursuing something that is in self-interest, meaning you're making money for yourself or building something of which you own, is it morally acceptable? I think it can be if you are also aware of its impacts around what you're creating, and all of the impacts, the whole supply chain, so to speak, and ideally also the impact that it has in a positive way. I think you can't separate that out of the self-interest.
So self-interest is fine as long as you are aware and take responsibility for consequences of your pursuit of self-interest.
Correct. So maybe one pair with awareness and empathy across, and awareness of all the different surface areas that something impacts, draws upon or changes, and then the empathy for all those different surface areas, all the people and things and environment, etc. involved.
So you clearly are a person very aware of your personal growth. How do you plan it going forward? How do you think about it? Which areas of your life you would really, or your personality, you would like to improve, and then what direction?
But yeah, that's an interesting question. My mind goes back to the Vipassana as well.
Good.
And where emerging from it, I asked myself the question of, would I do this again? And it was sort of, I don't know if I would do that again. That's the feeling that I had in that moment. But as time progresses, I actually realized maybe I would do that again. And try to find a chunk of time and see what's the impacts of it a second time.
A friend of mine does it every year for 10 years.
Wow.
It's totally different.
That's commitment.
I know.
Yeah.
I think it's so impressive.
Have you done one?
No, this is why I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm very curious what impact it had on you.
Yeah.
So what's your relationship with spirituality?
Yeah. We were, as a family, raised non-religious. We had traditions that we, throw a Christmas tree up and things like that. But we were raised basically atheist.
Yeah.
My dad grew up with religion, and then I always thought this was interesting. And then he was able to, because he was raised with a religion, then make the sort of decision or epiphany to make that leap into a non-religious paradigm himself. Whereas then we were raised with that decision already made for us, or raised in that sort of paradigm post that shift that he had. So that's how we were raised. But
yeah.
But yeah, we kind of with traditions around Christmas and Christmas trees and things like that, but not in a religious way.
Well, which is different from spirituality, right? Because you're talking about awareness and be part of the universe. You miss the universe.
Yeah.
So that's what led me to my question, because I thought, okay, maybe that's part of your intentional personal growth in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a spirituality lens, if that's the right word, when kind of reflecting and pursuing pursuits like the Vipassana and so forth. Yeah.
So going back to you selling universe.com, but then staying for 4 years with the acquirer. What did it give you? How do you feel about that experience? Because obviously there are lots of people who regret ever agreeing to stay in an acquirer because you essentially become an employee again. How did it work for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the reasons that we say, well, first of all, there was an earn-out for the first bit, so could walk away from the earn-out or, achieve the earn-out. So, we were achieving the earn-out, so that was one reason to stay for part of that. That was kind of a 2-year period, but then why stay for 4, right?
Yeah.
And the answer to that was, I think maybe linked to the identity thing, like that they were talking about earlier, where because I had associated my identity with Universe, I still really wanted to see that totally succeed, and it was hard for me to leave that because it was part of my identity that I kind of self-imposably defined for myself. So
you were
clinging
on to
clinging on.
all the identity.
Yeah, that's kind of one piece, and then another piece is for most of it, credit to Live Nation Ticketmaster. They allowed us to operate in a very kind of entrepreneurial way, and that's also due to the success they were having post-acquisition and their growth of the Universe. So it still felt autonomous. It was very fun to be expanding it internationally onto new continents, and there was still, so on the autonomy, mastery, and purpose, autonomy there.
Okay.
From that perspective, kind of to our pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
And then there was also a new mastery because we were growing at 2 new levels of scale and into new geographies, and so that provided learning as well. Until that sort of plateaued and there was a little less autonomy, and we'd learn what we learned and processed the billions of dollars of tickets that we had, and then it was time to reclaim that independence and let go of the identity, and then create the next one.
Because I noticed for people who stay at the acquirer, even though they often regret agreeing to do that, it actually helps them to transition in a much smoother way. And then, like me, for example, who had an exit without any earn-out and without any obligations whatsoever, that felt like it was a great idea, but actually it's a much more abrupt change in life.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that. That said, I also kind of imagine, when I think back on that period, it's like, oh, well, what if we did just leave more immediately? Because time is out of all the resources, it's the most finite and scarce resource. So it's like, oh, well, could have left that earlier and, had that time. So
to start building something like Peggy early.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, or do whatever, right?
But
Maybe
you don't
the longest-
regret it.
No, I don't regret it. Yeah, no regret it. No regrets. That was a great journey, and we learned a lot and had a lot of fun along the way too. So, yeah, no regrets.
Do you ever regret selling the business?
Sometimes I wonder, what directions would we have taken it had we not. But not really, because it's enabled this new phase, and our big one with Peggy, which is an even more exciting canvas and medium to be playing with. So,
Do you think you'll sell Peggy in the future?
I'm not sure. Maybe if the offer was right, a fiduciary responsibility to our investors and everything. But
I'm just interested in the intention, because is it for you a lifestyle thing?
It's not a lifestyle thing. I think it is a business at the end of the day. It's its own entity. It's its own thing that's living and breathing and growing. And I think the way that I might answer that is whatever produces the most impact. For artists and society and collectors and the art world and the society around it that can be shaped and changed, and that the impact is associated with the impact could be created through partnerships and things and evolutions, but I would kind of tie it back to impact, really. Yeah.
Last time I saw you was actually at Art Buzz in Miami.
That's right. Yeah.
And I wonder what you've learned about the whole arts industry since you joined it. Like, what are the biggest sort of discoveries for you that surprised you?
A lot. I mean, it's such an interesting and intricate ecosystem with many different stakeholders. So a lot of different things. I think, I've learned how it's very vibrant at this kind of upper crust billionaire, ultra high net worth echelon. And there's kind of a lot of liquidity and fun dynamics there that don't really translate down. So it's one thing I've learned. Lots of observations. I don't know where to begin.
Do you think art is a good investment?
I think art is, it's an alternative investment. So it's different than investing in a stock and what have you. And ultimately, it's tied to an artist. So it's an investment that has purpose or meaning beyond just the financial value. But there's this whole thing called the art market, right? And so that does ascribe value, financial value, in addition to aesthetic or a purpose value to these artworks. So, you can invest in that from a financial perspective, and it could potentially increase in value or going on.
No, we would recommend it. Because actually, we had a discussion 2 days ago with a group of executive founders who were looking into all these alternative investments, and we all end up agreeing that we have no idea if art is a good investment. And I thought maybe you'd shed some light on it.
I think it's one of the things that make art interesting is it's an asset that's an appreciating asset that you get to enjoy as it's appreciating. Kind of similar to real estate in a way, where you can invest in
liquid, except Peggy.com.
That's right.
Outside of Peggy.com.
Outside of Peggy.com. But yeah, real estate is it's an asset that you can invest in. It generally may appreciate, and then you can also appreciate it, live with it, live in it, as it's increasing in value. And there's very few assets in the world that are appreciating assets that you get to enjoy. And so art is one of those. And it's also interesting if you want to invest in it because it has social impacts as well. It's, giving back to artists and arts, and there's a whole community effect there as well. So it's different than just a purely financial investment.
For you personally, how important is it that it's beautiful?
For me personally, as a collector,
as a person who chooses to do business in this the industry is wild.
Right.
Wild. Is it that important element? Because you come from the tech side.
Right. Yeah. That's a good question. I think art doesn't need to be beautiful necessarily. It could be ugly. It could evoke emotion, right? It create conversation, and make you feel something. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be beautiful. Like, it could be beautiful. And many arts, of course, are, but it also could be maybe jarring or off-putting or unusual, and either in its aesthetics or its messages, and that's very powerful too.
So what do you think it gives people, besides just making them feel a particular emotion at that particular moment? What was the impact of art on humanity? Let's make it a big question.
Yeah, I mean, artists have shaped society in the past. You look at Keith Haring through the AIDS crisis in the 1980s, kind of drawing attention to that and telling stories and messages and creating change. So that's very powerful. Like, in the centuries past, artists have been rebels and changed the way we look at things. So that's kind of an answer to that in the big way. Your question.
So how much of your life is occupied by your business right now? Are there other joyful activities that you're doing, or it's really everything for you? It's joy and meaning and purpose?
Yeah, I'm very focused on Peggy right now. Yeah. So I'd say that, quite candidly, a lot or most of my time and energy and attention is on Peggy.
Does it feel like work?
I think it feels like work for sure. It's definitely hard work. It has that mastery element and challenge, and we put a lot of energy into it. So it feels like work, but it feels like work that's very fulfilling, and it's enjoyable. So for me, I enjoy maybe it's a masochistic thing, but I enjoy really working hard and building.
But we can't really grow without suffering. Right?
Yeah.
Suffering is part of it. But we shouldn't want anything without suffering, because whenever we want something, it's by definition suffering.
Yeah.
This whole idea of avoiding suffering doesn't quite work in reality, I think.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally relate to that. And the first venture, that's back to my kind of metaphor of like, food tastes better when you've suffered. You've worked hard in this. You've earned money the hard way with some suffering along the way, and then the successes that you see from that. Kind of with that contrast in life, juxtaposed against the suffering element, is even that more special. So
I see a lot also is people work very hard in a business, they sell it, and then they feel they suffered so much, they can feel sorry for themselves, and they're very tired, and they try to avoid suffering for a long time. For me, it's one of those mental blocks, like an obstacle that actually hinders people's progress towards finding their purpose. Sometimes for a long time, because they have this idea, I don't want to suffer. That's why I raise it, because I think embracing suffering as a source of pleasure, that we can't have pleasure, satisfaction without suffering, is still important as part of a mindset to move on.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, well said. Yeah, totally.
And if you think about art, it often comes from suffering. Right?
Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily beautiful. Sometimes it actually shows extreme suffering.
Yeah.
That's why we react to it so emotionally.
Absolutely.
Feel empathy for that suffering.
Totally. And yeah, there's definitely a parallel there with art for sure.
So what's next for Peggy? I find this business so exciting. I really hope it will grow very big and impact a lot of lives.
Yeah.
So what are your plans now?
Yeah, thank you. We're really, really excited. I guess what's next immediately is this auction that we're doing here in London with Paul McCartney and Aurora, Chemical Brothers, and 7 artists. So more of those, like more auctions. That's something where we've been finding a lot of resonance.
Do you think you replace traditional art workshop houses over time?
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe.
So I think right now we're not overlapping, right? We're operating in a bracket that's much more accessible in prices, in an area that they don't really operate. But as we grow and evolve, there may be a day when we're moving up market as well, and then operating in that bracket too. So
I hope they're listening.
never say never. So if you're listening, we're coming.
Because I always felt that it's one of the places that needs to be disrupted.
Yeah, and I think as I step back and think about the question strategically or kind of long term as well, what we're doing is, all the artists are registering their artworks on Peggy, and that's really creating a whole new canon of artworks. Each artist has what's called a catalog raisonné. A catalog raisonné, so typically, classically, it was a book, and it had a reference of all of the artworks that artist has created in their career. And then if you have a whole bunch of catalog raisonnés together, it creates a canon. And the canon has been historically defined by auction houses and the blue chip is a really kind of a small sliver of the overall society of humanity. Not every person is an artist. Everyone can create. As a child, where every child creates. So the auction houses only have a kind of a narrowly defined canon of certain quantity of artists. Meanwhile, on Peggy, artists are registering artworks and building up this much larger canon of artworks. And as time progresses, and those artworks and artists, kind of increase in notoriety, value, and the provenance evolves. That's really the ultimate registry. That why would you go to a narrowly defined auction house when there's this much larger reference point?
Is blockchain part of your technology?
Not at this time. We call it blockchain adjacent.
Okay.
My co-founder and CTO Adam has built things in the blockchain.
Okay. But that seems to be the logical technology for you.
Yeah. So the registry part of Peggy is right now it's a centralized database, whereas blockchain is a decentralized database. And so because we've built an AI where the artists register the artworks and collectors or anyone can validate the artworks, that AI is a centralized oracle. And so you can have a centralized oracle which could be linked to a decentralized database or to a centralized database. So for simplicity, and because it's a centralized oracle, we might as well have a centralized database at this point. But it's built in a blockchain adjacent way where at any point we could, pop it over to a decentralized modality. Is a good question.
And when you think about your future, you think it will always be building businesses, or you may become an artist yourself.
Maybe you can start creating art on Peggy, right? Yeah, I was creating. I certainly really enjoy creating businesses and software. But could create other things too.
But as long as you're creating, you're happy.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. It's a huge motivation for me. It doesn't have to be a business.
I know you're very young and it's far away from you, but how do you think about legacy? If you do, what's your relationship with it?
Yeah, legacy. I think family. So I'd love to grow a family at some point. That's maybe another kind of creative outlet, if you can use that metaphor.
You'll have much less time for business.
Yeah,
at that point.
Sure. Yeah, so we focus on that now, and then, but yeah, that's a piece of legacy that I would want in my life.
Family.
Yeah, for sure.
Craig, this has been amazing. You're probably the healthiest, mentally healthiest exited founder I've ever met.
Oh, wow. I'm flattered.
It is beautiful. It's wonderful. And that is really my biggest question. Like, I really want to understand why you didn't have the crisis other people had. Do you think it's your childhood? Is it the way your parents raised you?
That's where my head went. Honestly, it was, credit to my parents and my childhood, great childhood. My mom was an educator. So to my sister. And
that's what it is.
Yeah,
Your mom knew what she was doing.
Definitely, yeah. My dad too. My dad, he's a lawyer. But I remember as a kid, he always kind of spoke to us like we were adults and asked lots of Socratic questions and had a really special way of raising us as well.
Have you ever had any mental health concerns?
No. Yeah.
Anything?
Yeah.
Anything. It's so beautiful, very inspiring. I'll be definitely watching Peggy.com grow into a big and impactful business.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming.
No, thanks for having me.